Hey everyone! Have you ever been on a plane when a strong crosswind starts shaking it like a toy? Or maybe when it flies straight into a storm? And what if both engines suddenly quit? Yeah, that's not exactly the kind of thrill anyone dreams about. Hopefully, you'll never have to experience that. But when something goes wrong mid-flight, pilots have to pull off every skill they've ever learned to keep that giant metal bird in the air and bring it down without a single life lost. Today, we've gathered 10 of the most extreme airline landings that, by pure skill, courage, and maybe a little bit of luck, ended miraculously well. Ready to be thousands of feet above the ground? Let's go! A flight without a roof. Think roller coasters are wild? Try descending from 24,000 feet in a plane with no roof, while a hurricane-force wind blasts you in the face at 330 miles per hour. That was the nightmare for passengers on a Boeing 737 during a short hop between the Hawaiian islands of Hilo and Honolulu. It was supposed to be a calm 35-minute flight, but at minute 23, explosive decompression ripped the cockpit door and tore the roof right off above the first 6 rows. Passengers suddenly found themselves under the open sky, where the temperature was a frosty minus 45 degrees Celsius. They didn't even have time to unbuckle. Luckily, because those seatbelts probably saved lives, flight attendants serving drinks were thrown violently around the cabin. The captain dove for an emergency descent to 10,000 feet, flying at over 500 kilometers per hour, and landed the plane 11 minutes later, on just one working engine. Incredibly, everyone survived without serious injury. Landing on the Hudson. It sounds crazy, but sometimes all it takes is one duck, or in this case a whole flock of geese, to take down an airliner. Rare? Absolutely? Impossible? Not at all. Passengers on a flight from New York to Seattle learned this the hard way when their Airbus A320 had to ditch into the Hudson River after colliding with a flock of Canada geese. Less than a minute after takeoff, the plane shuddered, and passengers saw flames shooting out of the engines. Those unfortunate geese had cooked themselves in the turbines, knocking out both engines completely. The captain radioed air traffic control about the bird strike and declared an emergency. Seconds later, it became clear he couldn't keep the aircraft aloft long enough to reach a runway. Risky as it was, there was only one option left: land on the river. And thanks to the incredible skill of the crew, it worked. The shaken but unharmed passengers climbed out onto the floating wings to wait for rescue boats. This legendary landing would go down in aviation history as the Miracle on the Hudson. The plane with no nose. This is pure heroism. On July 27th, in Istanbul, Ukrainian pilot Oleksandr Akopov performed a miracle landing of a passenger jet belonging to a Turkish airline. The aircraft took off for Erkan in northern Cyprus, with 121 passengers and 6 crew members on board. At 4,000 feet, a violent hailstorm smashed the plane's nose and shattered the cockpit windshield. With visibility gone, the pilots decided to turn back. Flying blind, Akopov had to look out of a tiny side window to guide the aircraft. Against all odds, he landed safely at Ataturk Airport. The entire airport erupted in applause. Other pilots flashed their landing lights, and many came on board just to shake his hand. Truly a landing for the history books. The beach landing approach. What do you usually do at the beach? Relax, soak up the sun, maybe read a book. Not at Maho Beach on the island of St. Martin. This strip of sand sits directly next to Princess Juliana International Airport, where planes have to land on a runway only 2,180 meters long. That means they approach at an extremely low altitude, sometimes just 10 meters above the ground. It's so close that the jet blast can literally knock people over, something local authorities warn about constantly. Tourists crowd the shoreline, cameras ready, as massive aircraft roar overhead. It's thrilling and also dangerous, because when you're that close to giant jet engines, one small miscalculation could turn excitement into disaster. Would you be able to relax with that kind of view? The mysterious smoke cloud. A Boeing 747 was on a long haul from London to Auckland, New Zealand, with stopovers in India, Malaysia, and Australia. Shortly after a nighttime takeoff from Kuala Lumpur, something strange happened. The cabin began filling with smoke and the cockpit windows danced with flickering blue sparks, what pilots call St. Elmo's fire. Elmo's fire. It's usually seen in thunderstorms, but the weather radar showed no storm ahead. Suddenly, passengers saw flames shooting from all 4 engines. And then silence. Every engine had failed. The crew tried repeatedly to restart them with no success. Just when it seemed hopeless, the fourth engine roared back to life, followed by the rest. They landed safely in Jakarta, where everyone disembarked unharmed. The culprit? A massive cloud of volcanic ash that had choked all four engines. The pilot outside the plane. How many people can say they've ridden on the outside of a jet at 17,000 feet? British Airways captain Tim Lancaster didn't plan to be one of them, but fate had other ideas. In 1990, during a flight from Birmingham to Spain, the cockpit windshield blew out just 13 minutes after takeoff. The sudden decompression sucked Lancaster right out of his seat and halfway through the opening. By sheer luck, his legs caught on the cockpit controls. A quick-thinking flight attendant grabbed him and held on for dear life as the co-pilot dove for an emergency landing. Lancaster was battered, frostbitten, and had broken bones, but he survived. 5 months later, he was back in the cockpit. The cause? A maintenance worker had installed the windshield with bolts just 1 millimeter too small. 1 millimeter that nearly cost a man his life. The Siberian Survival Landing. On September 7, 2010, a Tu-154B en route from Yakutia to Moscow lost all electrical power 3.5 hours into the flight. Most instruments failed, fuel pumps stopped, and wing flaps were unusable. With only 30 minutes of fuel left, the crew searched desperately for somewhere to land. They spotted a short, abandoned runway in the remote village of Izhma, just 1,350 meters long. The landing was rough. The plane rolled off the runway and into the trees, but miraculously, no one was injured. Considering the circumstances, it was a victory. The Gimli glider. This Boeing 767 earned a nickname that stuck forever, the Gimli glider. In 1983, an Air Canada flight lost both engines at 12,000 meters due to a fuel miscalculation. Airport staff had confused kilograms with pounds. Instead of 20 tons of fuel, the plane had been loaded with less than 5. With no power and little hydraulics, the pilots glided the 132-ton jet to an abandoned airbase in Gimli, right in the middle of a car race. Against all odds, they landed without hitting anyone. A mix of skill, calm nerves, and sheer luck saved everyone on board. Hurricane crosswind landing. Landing in a storm is never fun, but that's what a flight to Hamburg had to deal with when Hurricane Emma slammed the area with 120 km/h winds. As the Airbus approached, a fierce gust pushed it sideways. At 250 km/h, the left wing clipped the ground. The pilots immediately went around, climbed back into the sky, and tried again. On the second attempt, despite serious damage, they brought the plane down safely. It was a heart-stopping moment, but one that ended with relief instead of tragedy. Landing without landing gear. What would you do if, mid-flight, the nose gear refused to deploy? That's exactly what happened to a flight landing in Astana. With 116 passengers on board, the pilots had no choice but to land without it. The plane's nose scraped along the runway for 30 meters before coming to a stop. Damage was minimal, and no one was hurt. Proof that a steady hand at the controls can make all the difference. Like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating stories. Stay curious. This is Warlio.